What's going on, y'all? Um, of course, I'm here like promised, but I did try to post a video. I don't know what happened, but it was just giving me problem after problem. I decided I might as well just go live. Um, and I want to talk about everything I've been dealing with. Of course, y'all know the last couple of months I had a lot of death in the family. One of which was my closest cousin. We were very close, and as soon as I just kind of started feeling normal again and kind of getting back to my stuff, but still grieving her, um, something unexpected happened last week. My ex passed away, and I've been a mess. I know I look a mess. I just been a mess. Um, Even though we weren't together anymore, we were still close, so that doesn't make it any less painful at all. There's no love lost, never been any love lost. As a matter of fact, I feel like that kind of brought us closer. Once we decided to just split, I felt like we were better that way. And to give you a little bit about him, which I spoke on here about him before, I told y'all a little bit about him before in bits and pieces, but he did have some health issues. He was in stage 4 of kidney failure. He was going through the treatment way before I met him, but not that long. And I think he did a total of about 9 years. He was on a kidney list. We had traveled and went to different states to get him on a kidney list and everything. I played a huge role in his life, like immediately as soon as we got together. I felt like we kind of rushed into a relationship. I did speak on here about that as well. And, things just kind of took off, but all was well because I always felt like the longer I was with him, I felt like that God put me in his life for that reason, you know, was to give him good support, you know, to love and support him. That's what he needed. He didn't have much of a close relationship with his family, and his mother passed away a few years ago. And um, he always mentioned how they didn't have much of a close bonded relationship. And the same with his siblings, and this was what he always shared with me, like, and I also witnessed it firsthand. So I know because I was there. Their relationship seemed more tolerable than just something that they wanted to have with him. So he always felt like he was the outsider, the black sheep, the forgotten one. But we got close, and there was love, and I loved him so much the same way he felt for me. Um, yeah, so I got the news last week because even though we weren't talking every day, sometimes we even went a few weeks without talking. I still know he was there. I knew what was going on with him. Followed each other on all the socials. And again, he wasn't close with his family, so of course I wasn't, you know. And at one time I was trying to mend that with them, and I just found myself crossing boundaries, so I backed off. Was completely out of place by doing that. Even though my heart was in the right place, I left it alone because I met them that way for a reason. And I knew what God had put me in his life for. I accepted that role. And so I got the news last week when his sister called me. I was at work last Friday morning. I had a missed call or two. When I went in my office, got my phone off the desk, I noticed that she had not only called but texted once. I was getting ready to head out to make a run. When I checked my text, um, she had asked me, had I spoke to him and do I have his son's number? And I told her, no, I haven't spoke with him and I don't have his son's number. Um, When my phone update, I have the iPhone, sometimes it'll have the contact in there, and even if I look for it, for some reason I can't find it. It's like they have to call me first. They're doing this new screening thing. I don't know, but besides that, I didn't have his number because I looked immediately, and it just dawned on me like, if she calling me about speaking to him or when the last time we spoke, it's something bad. It just hit me like that. Sometimes you just have that strong intuition to know that when you get a call from someone who you don't hear from often, it just might be bad news. So when I told her I didn't have it, she just said okay. And I just sat there for a minute in the car. I text her back and I said, "Is everything all right?" And then that's when she called immediately. And she said that I'm at his house where I just left his house. I was banging on the door, no answer. And she kind of told me things backwards and bits and pieces. And at the same time, I'm not trying to, like, the last thing I want to get on here and do is to blame, even though I might feel that way because we're all grieving. You know, even if they weren't close to him, they still grieving. That was still their brother. My thing is, she told me things in bits and pieces, and she started off by asking me had I spoke to him. I told her no, because that was the normal thing for us. We could go weeks without talking, but we still interact on social media. That was regular, like if we was right next door to each other. We had that kind of closeness. On top of that, when she mentioned it, it just hit me again. So um, I answered the phone, and she was just like, sounding hysterical. She said, "I just left his house. I banged on the door for I don't know how long. He didn't answer." Um, and not to mention his son. Well, I could say his name. I'm not gonna say his son's name, but she mentioned that he was at school because he's in college, and she was like, "Cause his car's out here too." Both of their cars were parked out front because the son's car had been broke at the time, so he decided, you know, that he was just going to stay on campus and not use the dad's car to get back and forth. He was taking him where he had to go. She said the last time I spoke to him, he mentioned that um he haven't been answering for me, and I've been needing a ride to work. It's been rough on top of class. And I'm like, and you just left there. She said, I just left there, he not answering. So I was like, okay, well, I don't know. I'll call this person. I'll call that person. His mom is deceased, so I'm like, I'll call his like his godmom slash auntie, his dad's sister, and I'm reaching out to them, even though they live in another city. They live 50 miles away, just to see had they been speaking to him because they're close. Uh, and nothing. No one spoke to him. And then when I went to where I had to go, I got back to work. Me and her, we texting back and forth because I can't really be on the phone at work. But I was still just trying to make sense of why would she ask me, do I have a nephew's number? But then again, I'm like, well, they don't have a close relationship. So I wasn't really expecting her to have his number because things like that they would normally come to me for. He really didn't have nobody at the end of the day but me. And sometimes I felt like he wanted to stay that way because he would he would express how many times they have stressed him out by calling him and bothering him about things that he really can't deal with at the moment. If someone, they're having health issues and other things they're dealing with and trying to maintain a good mental health, dealing with those things, it's hard. On top of trying to burden someone with their problems, things that can be fixed you know, he was in a battle for his life and he really did put up a fight. And I watched him. And just like I told him when we were in a relationship and even after, whatever he was going through, I was willing to go through it with him to be that person, that confidant, that comforter, to be that shoulder to cry on, and I was that person. I played that role And his sickness was the easiest part of being with him for so long. It made me want to be there more. I had a very deep soft spot for him and a strong compassion, and he knew it. So it didn't matter that we weren't broke up. So, pay no attention to the title, the X, because that meant nothing. Again, that doesn't make it any less painful. And there was never any love lost. If anything, we loved each other more after the breakup. So, you know, it's just been a lot because, again, I've been receiving information in bits and pieces. And on top of trying to make sense of it all, because for us to have the type of relationship we have, and I was always the go to person, I was the one to come to for the information about him. I darn near played the role as a wife. That's what he wanted. But when it got down to the very end, it seemed like he removed me from that position. And that's the part that confuses me. And it's hard to like process. It makes the grief even harder to process because, for one, that's not the way we wanted the story to end. That's not the way we wrote the story to begin with. You know, Again, he was a fighter and he was the one going through it. So I'm not in no kind of way trying to say how he should have been dealing with it. I knew that it was a struggle. I knew the pain he dealt with, even though he always put on a brave face and claimed one thing, I would still see another. But he knew that I was there. And he said they made it easy. Even sometimes when it didn't, I was still there. I could only do so much by being present. And again, he didn't have that closeness with nobody else. I still have my life to maintain outside of being with him. And I just can't see him ever thinking that he would burden me. I don't know where, how things turned out to be so, to where he started to give them information or put them on the contact list should anything happen. Because the last time he transferred from the dialysis center to a place far out, like in a different city, which was odd to me. But at the same time, I know him when he do things like that, being a very dismissive person that he was doing that to run away from bad news. That was his way of dealing with the news he received. He did that a lot, but I can't really speak and pinpoint it for that time that he transferred. The last time he did was the middle of the December. The last time I spoke to him was around that time leading up to my cousin passing at the beginning of December. And he was never good with showing me emotional support, being there for me when I really needed. He just was always unavailable during those times. And I gave him that pass because I didn't want to put a lot on him. I'm, consider myself a strong person, even though it would have been good to have that from him of all people. I never did. And that's not to come out here and speak down or talk bad, but I was used to the disappearing ex, but I still wouldn't go nowhere, you know. And that didn't really change nothing between us. So I was used to not hearing from him maybe a week or two or something like that, but we interact on social media. He wasn't too verbal about expressing his feelings. He showed emotions by, again, sending a text emojis or stuff like that. That's was his style of communicating. That was a lot of times his love language. Even though I had a big problem with that, and that's what it was though. Um, so when I would post how I feel about dealing with grief of losing my favorite cousin, that's how he responded to it, by sending a heart or something. So I received that in the way of knowing that he cared. And so as time went by, like I say, we wouldn't talk sometime 2, 3 weeks at a time, and it was nothing because I know he was still there. But to up and get this sudden call last week that you talked to your brother and he told you that he gave up dialysis treatment because he felt like he was healing. Do you know what that did to me after hearing that part, and the conversation just went like to another subject, like you really didn't just say something that mattered to me, and you could have called me, because he didn't. Maybe he didn't want to burden me. I don't know. That's where it gets confusing to me. And that's the part that hurt the most, because I ain't never thought it'll come to that for us. As close as we were, as tight as we were, I knew the secrets that they didn't. You confide in me about things you would never speak to them about. But in your last days, you was close with the people who didn't support you at all. So it's just like so much on me with that right now. Just trying to make sense of it, and I can't. And I do need that closure. I do, you know. Um, I just wish that she could have said more. Then when I talked to him, when he decided to transfer, remember when he transferred to a different dialysis center? And I said, yeah, a lot of times he'll do that when he got bad news from the last one he was at, or he felt like they was just getting on his nerves, because a lot of times dialysis centers get a bad rap. And it's true. They have really bad reports on treating the patients horrible with no compassion. I wouldn't want to be in a field like that if I don't have a heart for the people I'm caring for. Like, I just don't get it. Sometimes these jobs is just a check for people, but you chose, like, you specifically chose that. That's something that it comes with precise care for other people. You actually have to take your time and deal with people one on one. There's many individuals and there are many different personalities you dealing with, and they're just not delicate with people like they should be. If you ask me, the horror stories he used to tell me, the complaints I used to write up for him, transferring to different city centers right here in the city, going through all that with him, communicating with his social worker on a regular. But I did speak with the nurse when I was able to really just get myself together that following week. And she said, I'm just so sorry he didn't have you on the contact list when he transferred here, because he came to this center for a second opinion, because he did come, under the impression that I'm feeling better, I'm healing, and I'm really about to give this up. But before I stop, can you give me a kidney test to be certain? She said, and I gave him a kidney test, but the counselors and everyone, they just had to remind him that, your kidneys don't heal. You have to get a transplant. And that was something he wasn't willing to receive at that moment. And that's where it confuses me at, because that seemed like something we would have been talking about. And I would have encouraged him to keep going, keep fighting, don't give up, man. You already know what's up. You already know what's in the future. You know it's coming. I'm here with you through this all, you know. And it just hurts so much, because I just wish it wouldn't have happened like that. But again, when his sister called me and she told me that, she wasn't telling everything. He had called her last Thursday night and asked her, can you bring me to the hospital? Because I'm feeling weak. And while she's talking, all I could think about is that was my position. I was supposed to be there. But you had one job and you let him down. You didn't take him to the hospital. You actually made him think he could wait till the next morning. And that was the morning she went by the house, banging on the door like she's claiming stuff, and he was already gone. So again, that following week, so that happened last Friday when I talked to the nurse at the dialysis center. Monday, she was telling me that she just wished that she had me to contact She kept urging him, "You need to get back to the center. It's been 3 weeks. We sent so many messages. No call." He stopped answering for us. He sounded angry and frustrated and dismissive. She said it just sounded like he was in a deep denial, and at the very end, he just didn't want to keep going through with it because he really felt like in his mind that he was healing. And okay, so I was just like, is anybody else I could talk to? I wasn't trying to just like come down hard on them or nothing. It's just, I just need more answers about this. And so she was just like, we rushed out to his sister, his son, no answer. The sister didn't answer for the longest. And I said, all those calls was meant for me. I ain't gonna lie. Why did it have to be like that? And she said, somebody else they was reaching out to for him. Um, I think an aunt or somebody, I don't know, but it was unsuccessful. She said we sent out letters because he really needed to be seen. At that point, she said he needed to just go straight to the hospital because coming straight back to treatment after 3 weeks, it wasn't going to do him any good anyway. He was going to need to be get receive intensive care. And then she said, and that was 3 weeks ago, leading up to his passing. And again, back to his sister, she said, because he called me last night and said that he wanted to go to the hospital. He was feeling weak. And I say, y'all had been talking up to that. I was sounding frustrated, mad. Like, I'm not trying to hold this phone with you and just have a regular conversation because you will call me about stupid stuff. Like, you got this person number. Can you donate to this cause or something like that? Or I'm trying to pick up donations for a certain cause, but you don't have that same energy when it comes to your brother who was dealing with something like that. And so it's just like, so I gave you a pass all those other times he was still here. But now it's just like you really expect me to just hold his phone with you. Y'all was only reaching out to me because you know I was gonna be there. You know you could depend on me being there. But at this time, the time that I wasn't, you had one job and you couldn't fulfill that. He called you, like the nurse was telling me. He was reaching out for help that one time, but it was just too late because he put that responsibility in the people's hands who you thought would have really helped him out with that. And not saying that, well, he had decided to give up treatment is true, but he did reach out for someone to come and bring him to the emergency room. And my thing is, even if you can't physically get in your car, go to your brother's house and bring him to the hospital, which I really felt like it would have been wasting time doing that, but stay on the phone with him and call the ambulance. So all you had to do is call EMS so they could get him straight on to the emergency room because they have the equipment in the back of the EMS truck to deal with him to give him the medical assistance he need on the way to the hospital, which is 5 minutes from his house. Like, I just can't make sense of it at all. And that's what I've been dealing with. That's the most grieving part of it all, dealing with his death. Not to compare, but when it comes to my cousin who passed, who I was very close with, she passed back in December. Um, Kind of dealing with the same issues. She was on dialysis. She had got to the point back in October when she wanted to give up. Her nurses was calling me. I was on it. Like, get back to the center. You got to get back in there. Or go to the hospital. And they said, um, she had ended up checking herself in the hospital because she was good with doing it when she started to feel the weakness. But when they do feel like giving up, they're not gonna tell nobody. So I do understand that part, even though it's hard to accept. You know, you can't tell nobody how to travel that road. You just can't when they're the one who's going through it. All you could do is just be that good support system for them and love on them while they're here. Encourage them to not to give up, fight with every bit of strength you have left in you. And I'm feeling that he really did think that maybe he was healing. But something that really hit me yesterday, and it made me just broke down at work, is when my coworker was saying, that they say you start to feel better right before it gets worse. And I'm like, but you know, I was reading, of course, I was reading on how long can you survive without your dialysis treatment at the fourth stage. And it was saying like 7 days, some people only 2 days. And I'm like, he went 3 weeks. He was a fighter. He was strong though. He lived in a gym. He was a fitness guru. When you look at him, you couldn't tell that he was going through that. He was on it, even though he got on my nerves about wanting to be in the gym with him. Like, no, do you? you know, um, he was a gym rat. And he was trying, just like my cousin when she passed, she was trying. She even wrote a book. Hadn't finished it. She wrote a book on trying, because she was in cancer remission on top of being on dialysis. So she was dealing with a lot. She held on as best she could, and she called the ambulance for herself when she needed to get in there. It's plenty of times she wanted to give up, but that be that silent battle that we don't often know about. That's why it's good for people to really be having somebody there, you know. And again, not to be bashing his family, but I'm just being honest. He didn't have that closeness with him, and this came out of his mouth. I got the text messages to prove it, so if it was a lie, he told it. But at the same time, I witnessed how distant they were. They would talk, and I know that they loved each other, but it wasn't that close bonding relationship like you would see with a lot of siblings, especially adults. Like your brother is dealing with something like that. It's pretty heavy on him. You could be there more. If anything, he said they bothered him a lot about stuff that he just didn't want to be bothered with. But, that's how it was for them. But I just hope that I please God by being there doing the best that I could do while he was here, during our good times and bad times, because we did have ups and downs in the relationship. And even when we had split up, we had back and forths, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't nothing that's like we could fuss and then know that we're gonna talk again in the morning. Or we could fuss, or I could say whatever I'm gonna say, and it's good night, or the conversation was just never over. We never let the sun go down with it just staying that way. We was good with that, because why not? you know. And I really considered him my friend, like a best friend that God brought into my life that I never had. Somebody that I really had the pleasure of being with. I'm glad that God brought him in my life. You know, I enjoyed our times. We did things that you couples would do. We still did those things together. Um, yeah. Um, and I'm gonna just really miss him. I'm still trying to make sense of it all. It's been rough. Um, it been a lot. And about grieving, you know, you're gonna cry a lot. And then some days I could go most of the day without crying. I'm starting to kind of like think of it like, okay, I could catch a hold of it now and gather myself, and then I won't break down. It's like I'm trying to get control of it, even though I don't have to. Because that's another thing with grieving. I had to remind myself, you do have the right to feel and hurt and cry and break down, you know, and have those fits like I did yesterday at work. It just came out of nowhere because, again, it was the way his life ended for me. And that wasn't the story that we wrote. That wasn't the plan we had. We hadn't planned on it to be like that, you know? Um, and I just wish he was still here so I could say one more time, no, go back to treatment, or I'm about to call an ambulance. When we were still in a relationship, but it was coming to an end one night, I know when he was having a bad day, and a lot of times it would be for treatment if they pull too much fluid. Because sometimes I even had to do the complaint on it. You're pulling too much fluid. He complained about it, you know. Um, Filtering was always 100%. His filtering was good. That's another thing I spoke to his nurse about. She said the filtering was good. As a matter of fact, he had good labs. And I say, and he was at every top of every dialysis, I mean, kidney transplant list. He was at the top of every list that we got on. I said I wanted to do a GoFundMe for him. He did not want that. He don't like crowd. He don't like nothing that asks for help. He just that's where the pride came in. Like he was like, no, I don't want that. No, I'm good. He was so much against it. I wanted to sneak and do it sometimes, but I didn't. I respect his wishes on it, but I just wish he would have took me up on that offer and let me do that for him. I did everything possible to try to just be there. I can't say to stay alive because that was his own personal battle to fight. Who am I to try? Like, I'm not trying to control the way you're dealing with this monster, but he handled it well to me. Um, y'all excuse my glasses. This one is broke. I don't care. I got other ones around here. These are just the ones that I normally always have close to me. But yeah, just trying to still make sense of that. I haven't heard back from nobody in the family. I talked to them. He passed. I I can't even say if he passed that Thursday or Friday because when he called her late that Thursday night, who knows if he passed right away when he hung the phone up because she claimed, oh, he called me right back and said, you know what? Don't worry about it. Bring me in the morning to the hospital. And she said, you sure? No, there's no darn you sure. You should have got your butt on that phone and say, I'm about to call an ambulance for you. Just hold the phone. Use the other phone in the house, your daughter phone, your husband phone. But don't just leave it at that. You could have handed that over to me to handle. You didn't. And that's what hurts. And I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm not mad at her. I am. I'm so damn mad at her because that's all I could think about is he could have still been here. The nurse said that it was a possibility that he could have survived had he got to the hospital. You know, we don't know. We'll never know now because this is permanent. It's not reversible. He ain't coming back. And that's something that's real hard to accept because that's not how we wrote the story to go. Um, and it's just been a lot. It's been heavy. I will post some pictures of us and stuff and things that we were doing together. I might do another little short video. I might put it in short form video of just sharing a few times that we was together. Um, and in some of the pictures you will see, well, he was, it probably was a bad day. Well, I might not post that because that's not necessary. Um, because again, he fought a long battle, but that's my thing with it. And I haven't heard from family. I don't know nothing about services, and I don't even feel like that I need to reach out to them. At least do that favor for me and reach out to me this time for that much. I talked to his best friend, and we just kind of been communicating back and forth just to find out when the services is going to be. And one of my good friends, she lost her fiance, and she was like, it's going to start all over again when you go to bury him. I'm like, I know, I just went through this with my cousin back in December. Like, I don't remember none of from that day when my cousin passed to leading up to, I can't even remember when New Year got here. I do not remember the 1st of January. Like, I've really been going through the motions. I've really been going through the motions dealing with grief. And I just never expected the year to end like that, and we never do, or to begin this way. I always thought that both of them would still be here, you know, because it's one thing when you talking and interacting with a person on a regular, and it just seemed like, this just us and this a forever thing. You never see that day coming. I never thought that she would call me back, which she did when they did send the wellness check, because I'm like, what about the wellness check? So I'm like, I'm about to call the dialysis center. And I realized I didn't have it. I hung up with her and my mind was, I was messed up. I was messed up. I felt like I was on the verge of a mini nervous breakdown. And I don't want that again. But I felt it coming on. I called her back. I was just trying to breathe. Like everything was so tight to me. I was saying, what's the number? Just text it to me. And she talking to people in the background. Like, this is just too much on me. Like, if she needed somebody to carry it on for her, the rest of the weight, when you could have gave that to me back then. If you'd have told me 3 weeks ago he gave up treatment, I'd have been on his ass. Like, no, you not doing that. You have a son to be here for, Um, his son is devastated. He's in deep shock, as you can imagine. You know, it's hard to reach out to him and check on him when I just can imagine what he's going through already. Being that I lost my mother, you just know. And that's a feeling you'll never forget. And you think about every single day of your life. But this is new to him. It's fresh and it's super heavy. It's a lot. It ain't no processing that. It's just ain't no processing that, you know. But we gotta be there for each other, and that's all I pretty much could do right now. But I really don't want anybody, like, that's another thing dealing with grief. I'm getting ahead of myself. Hold up. When the wellness check got there to him, of course it was too late. I turned my phone off because I felt it already. I turned my phone off, and I don't like doing that because I have two children. I need them to always be able to get through to me. But I text them in the group and I say, I think his name was Lemar. I say, I think Lynn passed. And I just was going on and on in the text. When I went back to read it, it was gibberish. And my kids was like, what? And I just turned the phone off. Um, and I know when I came home from work, I wasn't gonna get no nap. My daily routine is to nap. I wasn't going to sleep on that because I already felt it in my spirit. He was gone from the moment she said, I'm trying to get in touch with him. And then she called back saying about I was beating at the door, no answer. And then the last thing she said was my dad, because they had different fathers. My dad was telling me to send the wellness check. And I'm just thinking, like, you so slow on all this stuff. I'm pretty sure, like his nurse was saying, he probably had collapsed and he wasn't going to get up from that. They had to break in on and get him to the hospital. And she said, with all that time passing, I doubt that he made it through the night, and he didn't. So I was like, well, I just hung up with her, and she told me her dad told her to send the wellness check. I don't know why they didn't already just dawn on her, but why wasn't they close? Why this, why that, why so many things? Some people just don't have the emotional intelligence, and that's not like a dig at her, like, because you may lack emotional intelligence for a lot of reasons. It could be childhood trauma of your own, and you don't know how to just, move on something like that right away. But it really would have been good if she'd have just thought about it in that moment, in the midst of him, the conversation. Like, hand me your phone while she's on the phone with him, to hold him on the phone, call an ambulance. Let's send him over to Lynn house because he said he can't move or something. And that didn't dawn on her. And that's the hurtful part right there. That I just could see him reaching out to somebody that could have saved him. I don't know. Y'all might say, well, it's wrong to blame. And I don't want to, because again, we all grieving. But that's all I could think of. if there was a chance. Um, what else I was saying before I end this video? Um, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of everything. I think I mentioned everything to y'all. I don't think I have no comments. I don't even know. I don't even. I don't have no comments. I don't think. I don't know. This screen is different. I don't know. If y'all leaving in comments, I guess I'll catch them when I end the live. Um, but thank you. I thank all of y'all for your kind words and stuff. Thank y'all so much. I'll still be posting shorts about everything, just the whole process of it all. Cause it takes a while to kind of get back to normal. Oh, that's what I was saying. Dealing with grief and work, it just don't go together. Because you're dealing with people, some again who lack emotional intelligence for whatever reason. They just may not know. Like I was ignorant to a lot of things before I became aware. But I've always had strong empathy, and I showed sympathy to people without even really saying a lot, just to let them know I'm here if you need me, and let me take the load off you. Go take a breather. But I don't get that from work where I'm at now. So I have to take myself away from that environment just to breathe and try to clear my mind and my chest been so tight. I even feel sick. And maybe it's from the crying. I do feel like I'm stuffy. I've been sneezing all day. My throat is sore. But the crying has gotten less. And I'm not trying to count that, but I notice it's getting less and less. I look at pictures of them, look at old texts and stuff, and I try to, I have to take breaks from doing that so that I won't keep breaking down. You know, it's just been getting frustrated sometimes throughout the day. Been in bed all day. It's the weekend, of course. Monday through Friday, I gotta go to work. If I wasn't at work, I would probably still be laying in bed. Um, yeah, it's just like people just expect you to still be showing up and be strong and be regular. And you know, just shake it off. This is not something that you just shake off. And that's for anybody. You know, you may have lost a parent, a sibling, a best friend, your neighbor, or something. You know, there's going to always be that sadness and that grief in the atmosphere. And sympathy is just like a heavy thing you're going to feel. You shouldn't expect too much out of people, and you shouldn't put a time frame on healing because you don't really heal from losing somebody. You don't heal. You learn to live with it, but you don't heal. And I'm aware of all those things, but it's just fresh. It's fresh. So you know what comes along with it. But some people are they lack compassion. They're selfish as I don't know what. Just expect you to still be there like this just a regular Tuesday or something. They really don't think outside of maybe this person is having a hard time, but they still need to be alone. Because I'm dealing with it better alone than around anybody. I felt like I've been kind of pushing my kids away, and they understand. They know that it's not personal. I'm just kind of like isolating myself right now because I feel like that's helping me get through it in a way, if that makes sense. It is. It's not to hurt them. It's just that I know that I'm gonna miss him. It hurts. That last conversation was the last conversation. And it slowly just keeps sinking in. I keep replaying it in my mind, this and that and the other, grief. You're grieving. And people just have to understand what grief is until they really get the full understanding of it. They're gonna come at you all kind of ways, expecting this and expecting that, and having the audacity to tell you you're just gonna have to shake it off. You're gonna have to you got to let it go because, they're not coming back, or it was their time, or they're in a better place. Like the stuff we've been hearing forever, and I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that he in a better place. I don't want to let it go right now. I don't want to let it go right now. you know. Eventually I have to accept, but I don't want to just let it go right now. I'm still trying to make sense of it. So that's the video. That's all I wanted to talk about, where my head been lately and my heart. And, why I haven't been on here like I was. But I'm going to still come with my content and everything. I'll be bringing it depending on how I feel, you know. So that's not going to stop. Um, I might not leave the comment section open all the time. Depends on how sensitive I am that day. Because some days going to be different than others. How much I'm willing to handle, you know. Even the kind and compassionate comments, you know. If y'all have my email, it should be listed on here or something. But my email is in my description on my channel. Feel free to email me if you want to send out some kind words. But, you know, um, yeah. It's just been a lot, but I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. I want to thank y'all for watching. Those of you who tuned in, and those of you who may have to catch the replay, thank you for being here. And I will see you in the next one. And just keep me in your prayer. I really need that right now. I need the strength right now because I'm a mess. It makes you not want to do nothing. I haven't been doing nothing, and I know y'all understand why. I haven't been doing nothing different. The plans I have made, I'm not worrying about that. That could wait. I got time for that. Right now, I'm just in deep thought. I'm just outdone, shocked, hurt, you know, and still thinking about my cousin every day. And it's just a lot. But again, thank y'all for being here. I'm going to go ahead and end it here. And I love y'all. I'm going to see y'all in the next one.